Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you once again for joining me for the Monday news and headlines from around the globe. This is the Roaming Prepper channel, and I am your host, Pete, once again, as we go through all the insanity that seems to be engulfing the world lately. Now, for those of you who are new, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you want to share, that would be awesome. If you don't like what I'm saying or you think it's depressing, you can give me a thumbs down. That's whatever works for you. Obviously, a thumbs up is greatly appreciated. What I want to do today is to discuss a lot of these overlapping issues, especially what's going on in the Middle East, because that has the potential between that and the Ukraine to very quickly suck us into a mess. And we really don't need that right now. So, to start with that, the Chinese Navy's presence in the Middle East involves 6 highly capable vessels stationed in the theater, according to Business Insider. Now, these particular types of frigates and destroyers are actually meant to protect either fleets or facilities from the sea. So they serve a lot of the anti-aircraft and monitoring, aircraft and drone monitoring functions that our own Arleigh Burkes do. This would be an excellent way for the Chinese Navy to insinuate itself in such a manner as to interfere with any American airstrikes if they so choose. Now, it also forces our American carriers to keep a little bit of distance because these guys do have surface-to-surface missiles which could attack our carriers. Needless to say, the presence of the Chinese Navy definitely represents an escalation in that area. Something none of us needed. In the meantime, Texas Governor Abbott calls for action on a colony of near Houston, accused of being a haven for illegal aliens, according to the New York Post. Now, this particular subdivision I'm actually familiar with because I've seen it before. It's up in the northeast quadrant of Houston. And apparently they've been taking on a very large quantity of immigrants, particularly from South America. And what they're doing, honestly, is screwing the immigrants. Some of these home builders will get them to sign loans or put down collateral, knowing full well they may not be able to stay there, and the bank will repossess it and sell it again and make a bunch of money. However, to that point, it also represents a potential threat because we really don't know who the hell's moving into these areas. Actually, some of the subdivisions are such that a legal purchaser will buy the home and then rent out to God knows who, and you could have 3 or 4 families in one house. This opens a risk vector, so to say, for any kind of terrorism or other behavior. So the governor is trying to squash that as best as he can. That would also call for action from the county and from the Attorney General, but we will see where that goes. Now, the home from the Senate passes the Kennedy Amendment, protecting veterans' Second Amendment rights. Now, ironically, this amendment was passed in the Senate a few days before the main shooter. Now, I find the timing very suspicious. The main shooter was a 18-year military reserve veteran, had never been deployed to combat, but was actually the first sergeant for his unit and was a firearms instructor. And in the last 6 months, apparently, he started becoming bizarre, and they sent him for a check, and then he went nuts and basically killed a bunch of people. I just find it interesting, some of these incidents, the timing. Again, I'm not saying this is or is not any kind of false operation, more along the lines of why is it. Let's put it this way, I like to look at what else is going on in the news when I see something like that, because it's usually something else going on. A colossal Israel-Iran war is much closer than anyone imagined, according to The Telegraph. People don't realize that Iran and Israel greatly hate each other. Now, the Saudis don't like Iran either, and that goes back about 1,000 years as well. But Iran's hatred and dislike for Israel, and it's mutual, by the way, could very quickly escalate things. As we all know, Iran is made it very clear that they'd like to see Israel not be there anymore. And they're working on atomic weapons. The Israelis already have atomic weapons. The question is, will it escalate to that point? Ironically, this has become such a disaster because now the Houthis in Yemen, who had fired on an American destroyer and at the Israelis, apparently fired at Egypt because Egypt would not accept the Palestinian refugees, which Egypt then shot them down. Really bizarre, some very old rivalries, and it can spin horrendously. Wall Street, according to this report, Wall Street set to open lower as GDP and jobless claims are higher than expected. So I want to point out something, and the reason I bring this up is jobless and employment and new jobs, right? You're hearing a lot of things, oh, the jobs went up, but how many full-time jobs that actually provide a living are being added to the economy? Here's the little kicker. If I get laid off, hypothetically, and then I have to work at, say, Lowe's and the mall and a garage or whatever, well, I have 3 jobs, so they count that as 3 jobs in some statistics. That's not 3 frickin' jobs. That's me trying to put together 1 job out of 3 opportunities because I lost my actual job. And the fact that the jobless claims are higher and the GDP is smaller, it's concerning, folks. We have very fundamental instability in our nation. Also, Putin's closest media ally warns about a coming world war. Now, there's been a lot of talk about this lately, ladies and gentlemen. Again, by the time you guys see this, Israel will probably have already been, if not already is in Gaza, basically running amok, trying to hunt down Hamas and make them leave this earth. A variety of ships, planes, military units, all maneuvering around each other is just an invitation for someone to screw up or someone to provoke someone else into acting first. We don't know what it is, but ladies and gentlemen, with all this rhetoric, with all this talk, at the very least it's going to screw up the markets, screw up prices, screw up trade and supply chains. So it's important for folks to continue to do what they need to do. Now, this report by Fox News is very relevant. Jewish American students outraged by rising anti-Semitism in U.S. amid Hamas terror attack on Israel. There have been a substantially large number of incidents involving anti-Semitism, both in the U.S. as well as Europe. There are also counter behaviors where Muslims and Palestinians in particular are being targeted. This is the kind of situation that makes it very difficult. Politics are one thing, but people's religions and cultures make it very different to find a middle ground, very difficult to reconcile. And with a lot of the nonsense some of our elected officials are spewing, in specific the Squad, who I am not a fan of, they're not making things better. They're not bringing people together. They're actually doing the opposite. Now, although I understand their right to believe what they do, they're not helping the bigger cause. The Daily Caller reports, out of bullets, the Biden administration fears to return of $5 per gallon after they drain the strategic oil reserves, which they should have refilled when oil went down to 60 or 70 bucks a barrel. Instead, they didn't. Now we're at the lowest point we've been in the past 15, 20 years, and more importantly, we don't have strategic reserves for our military and emergency uses. Why we put ourselves in that situation is beyond me, but ladies and gentlemen, that's exactly where we are. So if the price of oil or gas goes up, the government really has no other options to help us out. So folks, plan your trips, don't waste gas, and factor that in, because if the fuels go up, it will make energy go up in your house, it will make products go up, because they have to get them to the store. Another article from Fox Business, Federal Reserve is not in the position where they can cut interest rates. So again, you're looking at a situation where the Fed is trying to keep the country between the buoys while the government the administration continues to spend. Now, a lot of people complain, well, the previous administration spent a record amount. but the previous administration was under wartime emergency/pandemic footing. Once that was over, that spending should have stopped, and it did not. Instead, it went the other way, and it became substantial. And now we're seeing a repeat of what happened under Jimmy Carter: high fuel prices, a recession, and inflation all at once. Make sure you position yourself. Keep debt to a minimum. Make sure you have some emergency cash and pay your bills on time. And if you can stay debt-free, more power to you. But this just reinforces what I'm saying, that the economy and the economics of our lives are not going to get better. Speaking of that, Forbes says the fighting food inflation through supply chain sustainability. So what they're trying to do now is to do a better job of making sure the supply chain is effective, that it has alternative routes. So when we have disruptions like Ukraine, like Israel, corporations, the food industry, nations, governments can actually go to plan B or plan C. Apparently, they don't have a very good plan B or plan C, as we can all tell. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this mess. So in any case, yes, once again, fighting food inflation through actually doing our job is basically what I take this to be. However, ladies and gentlemen, continue to get your foods, continue to store, continue to be on budget. These are the ways you deal with this kind of situation. And if you can buy food and store it long term, more power to you. That's an even better option. Well, it's kind of funny. This was my last, how shall I say, training thought. Be prepared for an active shooter. I didn't expect one in Maine. I expected one in one of the big cities. But this is an ongoing threat, not just from domestic people who go nutbags, but who knows who else is in the country. Again, be familiar with the run, hide, flight philosophy. If you are legally trained and possess such equipment to defend yourselves, I would enhance your training. Learn how to draw, learn how to move and shoot, learn how to reload while walking backwards. A lot of these little skill sets you don't want to figure out on the fly as you got bullets zinging over your head. As a matter of fact, I saw a video recently of a police officer fired 2 rounds, her pistol jammed. She could not clear the jam. It's on her body cam as she struggles to get her Glock 19, which is a pretty damn reliable pistol, to work. So, folks, take care of your gear. Okay, this week's case study is actually a case lesson, learning alternate routes. What happened to those kids at the concert in Israel was terrible, and they didn't have alternative routes because they were drunk and stoned and really weren't planning on an attack, right? Start collecting physical maps of the areas you often travel through. Check for routes on foot, bike, driving, and mass transit. Be prepared to improvise if you cannot get on your car. If you cannot maybe walk, but you find a bike along the way that's been abandoned, well, you can borrow the bike. Don't steal bikes. That's not nice, by the way. Travel alternate routes, not just when you're commuting, but on the weekends when there's no traffic. Look for situations or intersections that might be problematic. Also, get familiar with where mass transit will leave you if you do take subways, buses, trains, etc. Know how to get home on foot. Remember, these trains, if they lose power, they're pretty much going to stop wherever the hell they are. And if you're in the middle of a field and it's full of water, you're going to have to walk in business shoes or high heels. You don't want to do that. Have that spare pair of blue jeans or the pair of sneakers in your office. Go to the bathroom and change before you hit the road. Be familiar with risks such as flooding, bridge or choke points, crime, or obstacles. For example, if there's a river between you and the house and you have to go over a bridge, that's not only a choke point, it's an obstacle, unless you know how to get over the water. So keep in mind that that kind of stuff is important. So I want to reiterate this last one. The true soldier fights not because he hates what is in front of him, but because he loves what is behind him. For the record, I have no idea why this stupid thing is put a strike through on my letters, but hopefully you can read that. Remember, the true prepper preps not just because of what is in front of him or her, but for the people they love. The same thing applies to all of us. So make sure that you understand the bigger picture. Don't just prep blindly. Think grandchildren, kids, cousins, mom, elderly, sick. We do this because of people we care about, if nothing else for ourselves and our dogs, but typically we tend to do it because it matters for someone else as well. Speaking of people that matter, as I will mention once again, there are thousands of minors trafficked weekly. Be aware of the signs of abuse, bruising, skittishness, odd behavior. They look for approval from someone else before speaking to you. The 888-373-7888 National Human Trafficking Hotline is always an option, or you can call the non-emergency number in law enforcement or 911 if you think it's important. Try to get the law involved. Now, understand by the time the cops get there, the person in danger may be gone, but at least push these roaches into the light so that they're forced. Maybe they'll make a mistake and the cops will get them. But by not reporting, by turning a blind eye, we just allow this to perpetuate. And it's something none of us should ever find acceptable because it's horrendous. And unfortunately, it happens way too often in our country. And watch your kids and watch your neighbors' kids, because not every parent pays attention, because you never know. Pay attention to their behavior, pay attention to strangers in the street. As I've said before, walk your neighborhood, get familiar with the way your town and area work, so that if you see something out of place, you'll realize it right away because it doesn't jive with what normally goes on. And ladies and gentlemen, as always, I'm going to do my little pitch. If you want to support the channel, definitely like and share and subscribe. That is the most cost-effective way to support what I do, and I appreciate it. But if you happen to be looking for product and I happen to have a discount code, you can support us as well that way. You could use my codes for ReadyWise, for Wallaby, for ETA Living, which is a survival water filter, as well as Holster 10 from 1791 Holster Company, one of my new affiliations, and actually the holster I use pretty much every day. You can also buy me a coffee, but more importantly, take care of yourself. Again, I do this as a side gig. Your donations are appreciative, they're helpful, but make sure you are squared away. Don't forget to take care of your basics. Well, ladies and gentlemen, once again, that concludes the summary of news and headlines from around the globe. I thank you all for joining me, and ladies and gentlemen, it's been a strange 3 years. Honestly, since 2020, I think a lot of us have grown and a lot of us have learned, and I know I have, and I'm definitely, even in these last 3 years, at a completely different place than I was before, and all of you should be too. Pay attention to what's going on. If you see a big headline in the news and it's splashed everywhere, look for what else is going on, because that's how things get hidden. We're all looking to the left and something happens on the right. And most importantly, stay on budget, stay on time, try not to panic, and try not to be pissed off and say potty mouth things to people while you're driving, like I often do on my morning lives. And speaking of my morning lives, Bread and Circuses, or the Domino Effect, check out my other series where I cover a variety of topics. Ladies and gentlemen, be safe, Godspeed, and take care of yourselves. I'll see you on the next video.